To the guest. Okay, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the guest speaker session of Table 3 from International Student Conference 68. My name is Amira Alia. I am from Indonesia and I'm currently living in Jakarta. And I'm currently studying at the University of Indonesia. And to begin, thank you so much for being present in our guest speaker session, which is a part of our study session for working on our research report for the final forum in August. And I am honored to welcome you all today. And I am here as one of the academic committee, and I am the table chief of Table 3. And in our table, we are discussing about smart and accessible mobility. So why? So for years, smart mobility has been an acclaimed solution to solve the urban problems related to transportation and urban mobility. But the technology and the concept that has been implemented sometimes are not accessible yet for the city inhabitants. And Table 3 here is initiated to spread the message and awareness that we have to design a city for humans and promote the accessibility aspect of smart mobility in cities. And most importantly, we are here to work on solutions that might help cities to improve their mobility to be more smarter and accessible. Can you, next slide? Yeah, this is my name. And then next. And to start, I will explain the agenda for today. So first, we will have an opening that we're doing now, and then we will have a president speech from the president of ISC 68. Then we will have a table. I will introduce our guest speaker today, and she will do her presentation. And after the presentation, everyone here will have the opportunity to ask the speaker about anything. So without further ado, I welcome Minori Kawajuki, the president of the 68th International Student Conference.
Thanks, Alia. Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Okay, I see nothing. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to ISC 68. My name is Minori Kawaguchi. I'm the president of ISC 68. Also, I am a student of University of Amsterdam. And mostly, we are super delighted to welcome all of you, also especially Mrs. Angie, who is one of a fantastic young leaders in the world and has been contributing to a number of smart mobility projects together with many others. So, as you guys probably know, this year's theme of ISC 68 is Big Step, New Chapter in the Global Society and Our Lives. Miss Angie's project, which basically or mostly focuses on sustainable mobility, which is very essential for population in countries, especially, such as Japan or Indonesia, or even Germany. Natalie, for instance, you're from Germany, with a large population. Thus, I'm very excited personally to hear what kind of changes or issues Mr. Angie will propose to us so that the society can take a step forward towards the higher level of well-being in transportation and mobility. And especially this workshop will be super relevant to Table 3's research, as well as hopefully other tables. As the president of ISC, I hope Ms. Angie will inspire students present here to be pioneers of young youth activists in the modern global society. That's it from my side. And then I'm going to now introduce what ISC is, to especially for Ms. Angie as well as others. So next slide, please. Minfa, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So ISC, the one before. Yeah. So ISC is basically the Student Association for International Student Conference. So the organization is based in Japan, but obviously it's like more and more open for international students. So this year we actually have more international students than Japanese students, and as well as committee members are basically from all around the world. For instance, Ali is from Indonesia, I'm from Japan, but I also study in the Netherlands, and Minfa is all from Korea. So it's like basically we're super international student association. And ISC is this year 68th. So it's kind of basically established in 1954. So it's right after World War II, and it's been super long time since ISC has been working on the global society. And every year, ISC is luckily sponsored or supported by a lot of organizations as well as companies. And then these are a few of those who supported, for example, Sigma Lives, Transact, Youth Consortium, Normal Mirizing. They are all kind of financially as well as kind of in whatever the way has been supporting ISC in general. So because of those support, we can organize a little workshop as well as guest speakers, keynote sessions. That's why we can also invite today, I invite Miss Angie today here. So we are basically aiming at making a little opportunity as well as a platform for international students to learn more, also become a global leadership in the future. That's it basically from my side. And then I'll pass the mic back to Alia so she can introduce today's our guest speaker. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much, Minori, for the amazing speech and the introduction. And now, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so now we will welcome our guest speaker for today, Ms. Deliani Siregar, or we may call her Anggi, the Senior Urban Planning, Gender and Social Inclusion Associate of ITDP Indonesia, or Institute of Transportation and Development Policy. She is an urban planner with a bachelor's degree in engineering and urban and regional planning from Gajah Mada University in Indonesia. And to add, she has participated and contributed to the mobility development in Indonesia, mainly Jakarta. But to Ms. Anggi, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Please, can you say hi for everyone?
Hi everyone, good evening.
Evening, Ms. Anggi. So
Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yeah, it's very clear.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us tonight. So if you want to share your screen and you want to start whenever you're ready, you're so welcome.
Okay, I'll start to present or share my presentation. Hopefully that all of you can also see my screen. Is it okay?
Is it? Yeah, we can see it.
Oh. Okay, then thank you for Minori and as well as Alia to present and also to introduce me myself. So once again, prefer to be called Anggi actually, but even my complete name is Deliani Siregar. Once again, I work in ITDP Indonesia, and within my position at this time, I work mostly in kind of things which related to mobility, especially talking about how we can ensure all the mobility can be accessed by women and also children, older persons, people with disabilities, and other vulnerable groups within the city. And talking about today's topic, talking about the importance of accessibility in the smart mobility, I really want to give you kind of like new perspective or even like giving additional perspectives how then we can ensure or how we should address accessibility within this very, very popular topic recently, talking about smart mobility. So first of all, I really want to share about or even like discuss more later on about how to define smart mobility, because in many cities, in many countries, especially in Indonesia, we usually associate the smart mobility term with this kind of like stuff. So smartphones, CCTV, talking about more common centers and a traffic management center, but then there is nothing that you could see happening in the city that can really fit the needs of the people. So most of the smart mobility can be defined as something that related to mobile apps. So how many applications at this time in Jakarta, in many cities in Indonesia, just developed very, very fast because of they think smart mobility should be addressed as the usage or the development of the mobile apps. But however, once again, talking about smartphones, CCTV or camera, talking about the installment and also the things related to common center or even more about traffic management center. So I think the smart mobility should not stop there. It's not always talking about how cities can involve many engagement from the people coming from smartphone only, or they can monitor every single things, especially giving fines for any kind of like things that do not work as shoot by doing and also install the CCTV camera, or even giving comment to the bus drivers, or even to understand about the traffic through the command center. More than that, smart mobility should be present by these things. So talking more about big data. And we understand talking all about the smart things, talking about smart cities, smart mobilities. We should know that this kind of things, the big data, should be processed in a very good way to fit the needs of the people within the city. So understanding, or just like giving a very short sample, talking about this picture, for instance, we just like understand, oh, maybe from these pictures we can see buses, cars, and then cyclists, pedestrians, or even other kind of like modes like motorcycles, and then the road. But then how the smart mobility can be seen in a very new perspective, talking about the smart mobility, talking more about the accessibility. So if we just like see the perspective from the people to giving more emphasize that the city should be made, should be created, should be developed, just like for the sake of people, for the needs of the people, how we will understand about the needs and also match all the things that we work in can be also have benefits towards the elderly or the persons, for the children, for the people with disability. So that picture should be seen into these kind of things. So when we start to add smart things into our urban mobility, we should understand, so the big data should address and should give us another perspective, another illustration, another kind of like data that can also be proceed to understand about the personas, who will be there, who are the people who used the environment, who can achieve or who will be impacted if we just like do something in the streets. So we should identify the personas. And talking more about this kind of like new perspective in inclusivity terminology, we understand that the vulnerable groups are kind of people that you said may be the minority, but they should like be addressed and also prioritized within this context. So first of all, we understand about the personas, who will get the benefit, who will be impacted. And then the second one, through the lens of the smart mobility, within this picture, we can understand about the movement. So we will not only talking about, oh, we have space, we have kind of like number of the bus that can be filled by the cars, buses, motorcycles, etc. But then through these pictures, through the lenses of the smart mobility, we should understand about the movement. Let's say the pedestrian movement, the cyclist movement, the private vehicles movement, the buses movement. By understand this movement, the data should like give us number of the facts and also will also influence the number of the policies later that we should take to manage all the needs. Because of, once again, talking about the streets, talking about the justice mobility in advance later on, we should like understand the movement as the basic things, why and how. Then later we should like divide the streets, the space, so it will accommodate the proper ratio of the people who stay in the city. So we just like want to understand, once the street just like divided or just like designed in a very, very, you know, big space that will allocate to the cars, so the city will not into the justice mobility yet, because of we understand that through the perspective of justice mobility lenses, the pedestrian and cyclists and also the public transit users, they are the one who really can only spend number of the options, number of the money, or even like the income into the transportation cost, because we also understand that transportation cost also one of the things that they will usually think before they decide to take a jobs or to access or to move in the city. So personas, movement, then we are talking about priority. When we understand about the smart mobility can gather this kind of like data segregated data, talking about the pedestrian, cyclists, and then the age, the ability, talking more about the gender ratio. This kind of data can also bring us to create a priority policies, or even like talking more about who will get the benefit, the biggest benefit from the development within the city. So, and a very, very basic things when we're talking about, like, once again, city for people. So we should like address all the priority given by the development within the city, especially our urban mobility should be addressed the needs and also given all the benefits back to the vulnerable group, because of if we just like design the city for the vulnerable groups, we believe that it will also fit with other needs. And talking more about this kind of like smart mobility, it will also lead into a very good infrastructure development. Why this kind of like smart mobility will lead to this kind of like improvement? Because if we just like, we can collect the data that can give, let's say, the simple canals or kind of like reporting canals that can be accessed by many people, we will understand about the gaps, we will understand about the challenges that is happening at this time, and we can like really realize how then our, as the city or the officials can work and improve our infrastructure to fit the needs. For example, many of the infrastructure within the city just don't fit the needs of the people with wheelchairs. And in Indonesia, in many cities, we just like build a very high curb. So let's say 30 centimeters without undecent ramps. So all the wheelchair users is very, very hard to access all the sidewalks that are already installed. But then if we're just like having this kind of like perspective to use the data where, when, how, and what, and why we should like giving this kind of like improvement, and we can understand about the priority once again, and we can like allocate the better improvement, allocate the better design to be installed, developed, and it will also lead to the accessible infrastructure. And last not but least, talking about the policies in the future. So once we're already understanding about the smart mobility, the big data will help us to understand about how the city will work and fit the needs of the people, because the city should be the place for all people, because it's the people habitat. We should like talking about the policies, not only talking about how people can access, I mean, technology, digitalization, smartphone is one thing. In many cities, in many worlds, in many countries, it's just like every single person developed the technologies because the people already educated, or even like they already ready to work and move, use a digital platform, or even like the smart things, smartphones, because it's not easy to operate. But to understand the context, in every city should meet a very typical and contextual environment. So to understand that, it should not stop talking about smart mobility. It should not stop just only talking about digital platform. It should not stop talking about the smartphone, the smart technologies that can support all the system. But once again, the policy should like give options. So smart mobility, smart city, who will also enhance the accessibility for people. It should really emphasize the one word that I really think at this moment, talking about options. So if we, as the officials, NGOs, activists, persons, citizens, are given a lot of options, the city can really accommodate all the needs. Because of, once again, talking about the importance, how people can access this kind of like system, how we can access the smart mobility concept, it will talking about how city can fit the needs, how city can address the needs of the people, of the citizen. And later on, once we understand that it will be useless if the smart mobility, smart city, just like rely only on the digitalization, digital platforms, technologies, without understanding about the vulnerable groups, it will just like be nothing, because we cannot understand about the needs of the people. Talking about the prioritize, it's not talking about the major population within the city who can really access it. We do not talking about the mass, but when we talk about the inclusivity, it talks more about who will get the greater benefit. And once we can address the people who really into it, I mean, like when we say about the pedestrians, when we say about cyclists, when we say about the public transport users, in many cities in developing countries, we just like should understand that the users are mostly from low income society. So once we do not understand about giving prioritize to them, if we just like do not address the needs and do not prioritize the vulnerable groups, we will never change our city into something better. Even we just like upgrade all the system into smart system. So once we just like apply the smart mobility and emphasize more about how we can ensure that all people can access this system, in the end of the day, we will give the priority back to pedestrians and cyclists. And once again, talking about accessibility, it's not talking about dominated, able-bodied, not talking about the male workers, but talking about everyone who live in the city, who mobile within the city, who think that the city as their habitats. So when we are talking about smart mobility, when we are talking about the accessibility, when we are talking about the city, it should be for all, because of, once again, women, older persons, people with disabilities, children, and low-income society. They are really will optimize the use of access within the city to fulfill their needs. Let's say for the economic purpose, for the social needs, and other on, so just like improve their quality of life. But however, when the city, even they just like start to upgrade it into smart city, into smart mobility, once they do not address this kind of like needs, these pictures will show you how they should face the challenges every day. Let's say for the first things, like talking about the safety, they somehow, if our city or our smart mobility concept do not fit their needs, if we just like don't plan it, we don't design it to match the preference and their minimum ability, or they also minimum capability, the city just like being nothing. They will sacrifice, so the vulnerable group will sacrifice their most of the money, because they should like spend more to buy the tickets, or even like the fare. They have to pay more or get the fare for the transportation cost, or even they will like just cancel the opportunity to work or to get the better opportunity in economic and jobs, because just they don't feel safe, just because they don't feel that they fit, they need to not be accommodated in the city. So they will put the risk and also put all the risks by themselves. So this kind of things just like sad to understand that if the city was not accessible for all abilities, all gender, all age, and also just like for all of us. So to understand that things, the needs, talking about smart mobility and also accessibility, how we should like really pull the importance of accessibility within our smart city or smart mobility. It's more talking about within the pedestrian orientation. I mean, like, however, whenever we just like want to design, we want to improve, we want to develop, we want to build the city, we just like should understand about the lenses and also the perspectives coming from the vulnerable group, because the way they shape our city, our mobility system, will also give us benefits for the larger good, for the greater good within the city. And if it's not, talking about the smart mobility, it will be very hard if we just like cannot fit the needs. Because of once again, smart mobility is not talking about how the app can help the people to move, to navigate within the city, but talking about smart mobility, how the smart mobility can ensure that children can also understand about being independent whenever they want to go to school. How then we can talk about safety, putting the safety principles as the fundamental creations whenever we're talking about the mobility, when we can ensure that people with disabilities can understand and also can be independent to access all the paths, all the streets, all the facilities that are already developed and also installed in the city. And it's more over talking about all the needs are captured by the city. So we can help them, because we understand when we are talking about the mobility, we are not only connect people with place, with space, but we're also talking about more how we help people to minimize the cost and also expenses from their daily routine to get the better opportunity that will connect them to better education, better jobs, and also better quality of life. I think I'll discuss more in discussion with all of you guys. So thank you. That's all my presentations.
Okay, so thank you so much, Miss Algie, for your presentation. It was really, really insightful. I can see this accessibility part from a whole new perspective. I also note some of the review, but but I think I will let everyone here to ask questions. If anyone wants to ask questions or want to discuss something with us today, feel free to open your microphone and your camera, or you can just type your questions or your discussion in the chat box. Okay, Natalie.
Yeah, hi. First of all, thank you for your great presentation. Currently, I am walking on crutches, so it might be also a personal matter, but when I'm going through my city, I often face some obstacles. What do you propose I could do about it? Who could I talk to, or what should I do to lower these obstacles? For example, I tried to get out of the bus and it just didn't open the door for me because I was too slow on my crutches.
Should I answer directly or should like wait for more questions?
Yeah, you can directly answer.
Thanks, Natalie, for the questions. I think it's really, really important. I mean, like in my works at this moment, so recently in this last 2 or 3 years, I work with number of the the actual users that always give us the advice, but it's really hard at the very first time we talk with the cities. But then to understand that the cities start to try to develop this kind of like quote unquote smart concept to turn all the system into smart cities. So we work with cities who really know how to open the canals, the reporting canals. So we start with the reporting canals when we invite all the users, all the citizens to participate, to report anything around them in the built environment. Let's say if they are very hard to access the bus, to access the sidewalks, we just invite all the comments, all the reports from the citizens. So once we get the data, so we just like collect it into, let's say for the 3 months, if I'm not forgotten, just like to collect all the data to all the users can like really give comments and also feedbacks through all the built environments already installed. So through this kind of like data, we can show up with the cities, these number of the challenges that faced by people every day when they really want to, let's say, take a bus. It's very hard And then later on, after we just like show up the data, as in I work in ITDP, we should like give with the recommendation, follow up all the findings with the recommendations. We recommend the design. So recently we worked for Pandu, so one of city in Indonesia as well. We offer recommendations about the bus designs. And in Jakarta, we just like work furthermore to also recommend the minimum standard for the services. So it's also include how long the bus, so how long the bus should stop in every bus stops. So because we just like count, we do sampling, we talk a lot with the people, with all the users to understand the minimum needs, talking about the time, let's say to make sure they are not hurry whenever they want to go in and go out from the buses. So all these kind of like things we try out. We collect the data, we show up the number, we just like giving the priority cases, and also we go with the details, talking about the design, not only talking about the buses. And then so because of Indonesia, the bus is just like having a high-tech buses, which not really accessible for all. So then we just like offer the new designs that will use the log decks, and then that's why we also complete all the recommendations with the minimum standard of the surfaces, talking more about the width of the gates, and then talking more about how many seconds are needed at the minimum to allow the people to get off and get in the buses, and etc. But the thing is, it's really to understand and also to try out. I mean, it's very difficult. It will be very different for every cities in every context. Let's say in Indonesia, it will take longer time, I think, for how many seconds needed for the bus to stop, to allow all people to get in and get off. So maybe if we just like, or if you and your friends in the cities can start to quote unquote do prototyping or to take samples about how many seconds or how long or how the design can accommodate the special needs people with the crutches. So I think it will also good to start with, because later on it can be also, this finding can be upgraded and offered to the city.
Okay, thank you. I just got confused because of the sounds in between. Yeah, thank you for your answer. Maybe if I wanted to change something, and I should change something, I can start asking my friends and different people to collect this data. Thank you.
Okay, so Miss Anggi, so the ideal way to tackle these kinds of issues is to use the bottom-up approach or participatory method, right?
Yes, exactly. I'm so sorry if it's like confusing and also if my voice is not clear enough. But the thing is, just like start to talk with more people and collect the data. Once again, we're not talking about the majority of society. We are talking about the actual needs. And however, I think whoever also have a chance to talk with the cities, and through all the system, through all the social media, through all the channels, if we can start with it, and also develop the descriptive way, the narration, I mean, to tell the story, it's really beautiful to start with, to talk with the cities.
Okay, so there's several person that put their hands up, but I saw Shafi first. So Shafi, go ahead.
Thank you, Alia. Thank you for the presentation, ma'am. It was really insightful and very comprehensive. My doubt was that, do you feel that when the sort of planning and policy making is done, then certain aspects are sort of either invisibilized or overlooked or sidelined when we talk about smart mobility? Is it in like any aspect? It can be in terms of a certain citizen group or costing or any sort of inaccessibility in another format, is it possible that certain aspects get sidelined or invisibilized when we talk about smart mobility?
Sorry, I think my connection was not stable enough. So the question is how we...
Should I repeat my question?
Yes, please. Sorry.
Okay. So my question was that when we talk about policy making for smart mobility and in general smart mobility, do you feel that certain aspects or certain citizen groups are either invisibilized or overlooked in any way when we talk about the concept of smart mobility? It can be in terms of costing or practicality, etc., etc. Is it invisibilized in any way?
Yes, yeah. So actually talking about this kind of things in a smart mobility in many contexts, in many samples, in many practices, it's just like, you know, all the data will shows about the majority sample, majority things, you know, kind of like, let's say, if we just want to present all things, we just say about these 80% of society feel blah, blah, blah. So all the policy will directly goes to this kind of like majority. So number of the questions, number of the concerns are unseen because of, yeah, you know, they are minority, or yeah, we can see that it's a very invisible. But then talking about the policies, when we really want to address all the needs and also to address the obstacles talking from yes, to be seen in a very broad perspective coming from the vulnerable groups, we should like address this kind of like mindset, or even like do shift paradigm to ensure that all citizens, all the society, all the groups have the same portion to talks to address the obstacles within the cities. But then, however, talking about, is it like possible to make them to be seen to, let's say, in one perspective, so one vulnerable group, talking about women, for example, number of principles that we start to develop to be seen by the officials is safety. And most of the things just like not be seen or cannot be seen by the officials because they just like rely on, or just like they rely on the data and see that safety majority done by the male perspective, and also for the workers perspective, it's not, you know, to access city, it's not hard. It's very easy for them to access city, to access the mobility. But then whenever we start to show them about the safety, the crucial part of the cities, the human things, whenever they want to access the city, so we can also highlight that the female, the women groups should be addressed, the opinions should be addressed within the planning, because of, and also talking about decision maker, I think it's one of another part that we should like understand. Many cities in many countries do not allocate their decision maker positions for vulnerable group, for instance, women. So because of the decision maker do not have the same experiences with the vulnerable groups, they really cannot also create the good policy that will fit the needs of the vulnerable groups. Is it answer the question?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Shafi and Ms. Angie for answering. And I saw Takaya, but before Takaya, we have a question in the chat box from Anjali. I will read it. So the sustainable mobility requires a mind and behavioral shift, as it is an integrated concept that has environmental and social impacts. Could you please quote some initiative or share some system that has resulted in such change?
Yeah, so I will give a sample. So one of the things that also done collaboratively in Indonesia and Jakarta in between ITDP and also GAUM, so one organization who has focused on people with disabilities, and also UN Women Indonesia. We work together with Ministry of Public Works. Together, we do study, quote unquote, together with people with disabilities, women, children, and older persons in a field, let's say, to measure the minimum space that they need to move. And then we do also study and also field experience by doing quote unquote walking tour to collect all the things, to see the gaps, and to let the Ministry of the Public Works understand about how people move, what kind of behavior that people have within the actual context. And then by doing those studies, walking tours, and discussions with the actual users, we finally can also, now we are in the middle of the term to finish and complete a national guidance and document talking about the guidance for the inclusive planning infrastructure for pedestrians. So this kind of like good things that I can mention, and also other initiatives can also coming from the society. Number of maybe friends coming from India also familiar with safety pin. Safety pin also one of good things as example that I can say so, because of safety pin also engage with women and all the vulnerable groups that can access by the mobile apps, and through the safety pin we can do reports, and through the reports all the designers and planners can go through by the reports to create new plans, new designs that can be offered to the cities. And this kind of like system can also invite more people to engage with. And this kind of like bottom-up approach once again is a very crucial things to be underlined within the system, because we won't be that kind of like quote unquote smart if we just like don't fit all the needs.
Thank you so much for answering, Miss Anggi. And then we have Takaya.
Hi, thank you for the great presentation. And in the presentation, you mentioned about smart mobility is for all people. Like it doesn't matter whether he or she is like a man or woman or young or older. And I also really agree with this viewpoint. But at the same time, like I came up with the question about in the case of Indonesia, like how do you include people who is not familiar with like mobile, smart mobility or like a digital society? Like I guess especially the older people, they are not really familiar with mobile society. So I just want to ask you, like, how do you include those people who is not really familiar with it? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the questions, Takaya. So actually, it's a really fundamental thing to ensure that all people can participate, can also involve in the change, and also to take comments, actions, and finally get the benefits from it. So to start with, we do not only to work to collect the data. I mean, we do not only use the digital application, digital platform, or only ask them to fulfill the G form, for examples, to understand about their needs. We also, so in 2018, ITDP, if you just like want to go to our website, we also have a kind of like publication talking about the collaborative planning process. So we start to work and open the voluntary works where we invite all people, all students to participate, to look up into their nearest neighborhood, what they can do together with the neighborhoods. So there is a number of neighborhoods within the Jakarta. So we have like around 37 or more or less 37 neighborhoods who joined, and we opened the voluntary sessions when all the people can also participates, students, academia, or even like the normal people, workers, and everyone just like enjoy and participate. But then once they being a volunteer, they will help also to work together with the neighborhood. So they will like be assigned into certain neighborhood. Usually we just like allocate or just like place them into the nearest neighborhood wherever they are coming from, because it's really essential to place them there, because later on, once they get inspired, they will start the same things in their own neighborhood. So all the volunteers will be assigned and allocated into one of neighborhood. They will work together with the neighbors to collect the data, because as you said before, not all people can access smartphone, or they are not very familiar with all the digital things, but then we can talk with them. In the case of all the persons and also people with disabilities, we do extras, because we should like visit all doors, all houses within the neighborhood to ask them about how they can perceive the condition of the neighborhood, how their needs to access the street, what kind of activities that are happening every day in their daily routine, all the things that we ask in a very, not into technical questions, like we just like want to understand about their daily routines, and then how they optimize the uses of the streets, how they can explore the neighborhood, and etc. But then for the women, for the children, and for the women, we just like go to their routine events. So in Indonesia, every kind of neighborhood, they have a routine events for women, let's say, to just like together and also to talk, to discuss about what events that we should done like once a month. So we get the data, we collect the data through those events. And then for the children, we come up with, we play with them. We have board games, we created board games that will also to understand once again about their needs in a simple way. So the question will be different from the elder persons and also for the women, for the children, because we will like fit the context with their languages to make it like simple to understand. And also we also talk with men. We are talking about the neighborhood itself. And once it comes to the findings, so when we just like we got all the data, we got findings, we understand about the context of the neighborhood. The volunteers and the neighborhoods work together to do collaborative planning process. So after the volunteers presents about the findings, the total findings, together with the society, the neighborhood, they work on planning process. So what kind of things that we should do together, which issues that we should address first. And then after having a priority, we also introduce the digital platform, talking about the maps, how to create maps, and also how to we engage more and more inputs, comments through all the process. So after the planning process, we do collaborative design process. After that, we do tactical urbanism. After we do tactical urbanism, and also there is one of like digitalization things that we start to introduce with them, because we also introduce an app that they can use and access to give, continuous comments and inputs. And then later on, after we implement the things by doing tactical urbanism, so tactical urbanism kind of like, sampling out and start to test one of the interventions that we want as a pilot, just like in a very low budget and low, not the low impact, but just like low budget but high impact things, because it's based on the priority that just discussed with the society. So once we do the tactical urbanism, we should evaluate what kind of things that we should adjust. Let's say if it like the design, or we should like go for the application, or we should like scale it up, etc., etc. So through this kind of like incubatory things, because we can say it's just like a pilot, because we have all the neighbors can develop in their own context. And finally, after 3 months, the volunteers and also the neighborhood, they can create an exhibition. So they can create an exhibition where invite all the officials, the city officials, the district officials, to see about how the neighborhood can move forward, how it was, how it's now, and how the process goes. The exhibitions just like through all the streets. So they install panels and stories from one alleyways to another alleyways. We do walking tours to let the officials, all the potential donors, if you want to say about the sponsorship. So we invite all the persons who can like really give the budget and also scale up the intervention. So all the exhibitions done and it's wrapped up. We give this kind of like experience to develop the next step to the neighborhood. So once again, because we already used 3 months to do transfer knowledge in between the technical persons and then the volunteers and the neighborhood, we believe that the neighborhood can work on and continue all the good works.
Thank you for answering. Like I didn't expect that. Like it's so great. Like the way to include people in Indonesia. Yeah, thank you for the teaching.
You're welcome.
Okay, so there is one person that putting her hands up, and also there's several questions in the chat box, but there is one question that is kind of like related to your previous answer to Takaya. This is from Purva. After collecting the data and analyzing it, what is the implementation approach? And also you said for people who don't have a mobile, a doorstep facility is used. Isn't that process tedious, time-consuming, and expensive?
Yeah, exactly. So talking about the questions, thank you for the questions, Purva. And also I think there's one other related questions as well, talking about the toughest part of the user research. Talking more about the users, because we understand that users, we are all users. So all the citizens should like participate within the cities whenever we're talking about the bottom-up process. But however, I'm not really into sampling things actually, but then in the field I work with, I believe that this kind of like system can be tackled, especially talking about the time, the expense that should be mitigated before, because if we just like to study and also we just like go with our own study, let's say in my institution, so if just like ITDP go by ourselves to collect all data, we will not complete all the things just like for 3 months. But we understand that enabling people is something, another thing that we should think and should develop. So that's why in 2018 we start to look for the opportunity to test a voluntary concept, because we may understand that so many people really want to do something, even they do not have any time. Even some person have time, some person don't have time, some person have money and the other else don't have money, the other persons have the technical capacity and the other one don't. So we try to match up this kind of like voluntary scheme and let them to contribute something to the neighborhood. If their neighborhoods were not participating in our pilot, they can do voluntary work in the nearest neighborhood. And within our pilot, doing this kind of like working together with the neighborhood, we really need like 1 to 2 months to select and to mix match all the volunteers to before we assign them to selected neighborhood. So it's also to understand the human capacity mapping. So it's kind of like HRT, but then we should like understand who will work with who and who will match with who, because of the things that they have at this moment will also contribute something. So Yeah, talking about the expenses, all the experts will allocate into one neighborhood, and we try to boost all the developments from the neighborhood with the volunteers, because we believe, once again, we will the students we will mix the volunteers group. It will consist of students or lecturers, and also the experts, technical experts, or even the sociolog, or even the architects. We put all of them in one groups, and all of them just like, naturally do the transfer knowledge within the volunteering works, the volunteer groups. And all the volunteers within a group usually do sharing knowledge with another volunteer groups, and all these kind of like persons will also share their time. So let's say if the architects do not have like much time to work with in kampung, but the students have, the students will collect the data and fit the data, and also even like, have a sense of the architects have, because of the regular talks a lot, because we also have the capacity buildings, like 1 month to spend with the groups and talk with the groups to familiarize one person to another. And also we give them the materials talking about what kind of things in a planning and collaborative planning process. And we let them to discuss, to ask whatever they want to ask. So this process, yeah, time consuming, but I believe it's not talking about 1 year for one locations. If this voluntary scheme can be copied into another places, and we can scale up this kind of like works because of the voluntary things, I think it's very good. But however the mission is, objectives are, but then I believe if we just like turn it on and also let people to actively participate within the system and make them a very common words, and it will also resonate and also address our concern on time and expense. Because I think once we can also facilitate, because of also some of like people, the vulnerable group itself, they really want to participate to being a volunteers. Let's say for the women and older persons, usually because they have time, but they want to contribute something, but they do not know how and who that can accommodate the needs. I mean, like if they want to do something, what kind of things that they can do, and how can they do something for the other person. So by inviting the older persons to commit in being volunteers, we also not only save the time and also expense, but we're also enabling them to understand a new perspective of the city, and also enabling them to change their own neighborhood into something good. But the tough part is like to communicate at the first with the users, and later on, if we just like don't manage it well, it will like get a delay. So all the things up will also take more time and expense. But however, I think the voluntary things can be one good practice that can be explored.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer. There is 2 more questions in the chat box, but we have Chanchal here. Chanchal, please ask your question if you want.
Yes. Thank you, Alia. Thank you, ma'am. It was your presentation, and we like it very much. And my question is, actually, it's not question, it's my concern toward our society, that the students are up down in daily basis in in local vehicles or public vehicles, and not getting time and not getting reach on time. So what can we do in that context for transportation to them, having different transportation system, or what is be the solution for it? Thank you.
Thank you, Chantal. Once again, I'm so sorry if it's just like cannot address it well, but later on, if your question doesn't address it well, please comment. But then talking about time, is it correct?
Should I repeat it?
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
okay.
sorry.
So,
So talking about if we, yeah, the obstacles of people, the challenges to ensure that people will shift to the public transportations, because of most of the people just like rely on time, on how they manage a day. If they can get the public transportations, because of they need to be hurry up, because they need to be on time to get to school, to get to the office. It's kind of like trouble because of when our public transportation, it's not that reliable. Because, and to start with, the public transportation in many cities are planned by the male workers dominantly, and also for the able body. So looking from the neutral users, quote unquote, because of the female workers able bodied is perceived as the neutral users of the public transportation. Most of the public transportation planners, they just like schedule the public transportations only in a peak hour. So because of this terminology, we understand about peak and off peak. Whenever the public transportations will perform well, just like in peak hour, but they will not or eventually get not that good. Worse in off-peak hour, because they just want to address the needs of the male able body. But then when we are talking about the vulnerable groups who will have tendency to access the transportation all the time, they will not think about the rush hour or peak off hour. They will just like go whenever they need, because of, as we see that women will also have different chain of pattern at different chain and pattern to mobile within the city, because of, let's say, before going to the office, she will need to go to the school to drop off the kids after that, and go to the office. Back from the office, she will need to stop in the nearby market before going back to the home or house. But then this kind of things, to be honest, are not addressed well by our public transport planners. And as the impact, it affects the distribution of buses, distributions of the trains, and other kind of like modes to serve the passengers. So it also will result in that the frequency of the public transportation modes will not fit the needs, and it will once again be we will face, and we will see that, oh, we are getting late because of the bus is not coming on time. Oh, we will wait over 10 minutes because of the buses were not ready, and we will get late, and I don't want to choose to take buses because it will let us to not being on time to reach our destination. So this kind of things really problematic, because of, once again, the planners are not considering the perspective of the vulnerable groups. But to address the problem, we believe that if we understand about the mobility patterns of the women, the vulnerable groups, we can change the perspective. We can influence the plan, and eventually will lead to the improvement, the frequency, the headway. So the headway is about talking about the time that is needed in between one mode to the next mode. So let's say if we're talking about the 5 minutes, so per 5 minutes, the bus will come and serve the passengers. It will improve to that way. But then that we can do once again as a society, I'm not really sure about the cities that you are in at this time, what kind of the system offered there to quote unquote complaining. But then in Indonesia, it's quite good to use social media, but then it's not always talking about reporting through the social media, but creating this kind of like environment and use the social media and use the digital platform to report this this challenge will also help to understand about the case and will lead to the improvement. But however, once again, it's really, really important to have someone in technical side and also in the decision-making side considered, or even like coming from the vulnerable group, especially women, because of if there is no woman as a decision maker, it will be very hard, I think, to take or to lead into some good interventions.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss Anggi and Chanchal for asking. So we still have few more questions. So this one is from Ryuji. He asked, but I think everyone here can also answer if you have any opinion on this. So I'm going to read it. I'm curious about how AI or artificial intelligence will be used in smart society. Will it be practical tool to make a smart mobility society better?
So if I can answer it at the first, and as you said, Alia, if there is anyone who want to participate in discussion, please do. But then talking about AI, it's really interesting to discuss at this time because of as long as it can be reached, as long as it can be accessed by people, I think it will be very interesting approach to be utilized in the next months, years, or decades. But then because of through AI, I think it will give new experience. It will give new perspectives as well, and can illustrate and help people to illustrate actually how the city will work, how the mobility can be improved. Because of, I believe AI is kind of like an environment that we can develop, that we can, set in particular way, and we can let people to, it depends on the it depends on the purpose of the creation of one of tools. But once, let's say, if we just like set or build the system to let people experience how difficult the city to be accessed by vulnerable group, it can be utilized and it can be used by the officials and help them to understand or to create better policies. Maybe that's the fastest thing that we can do or implement. So it will help the officials because officials have budget and it's very easy for them to reach and implement or to adopt the system, the AI system, because most of them are well educated and also have the sources of the budget. And once they can feel and experience all the senses included, they can also shape the good policies and plan that can be developed and tested in the city. But in the next future, maybe once the AI system can be developed and can be accessed by all people, we can also ensure a set or build a system environment that will help people to see or to visualize what kind of city that they really want to. So once they can participate and help, once again, give an illustration to the officials to imagine what kind of the cities that can help and also address the needs of the people. It can be so practical to help the city and to create a better mobility system in the city.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anggi, for your perspective. Because this is a discussion, I hope everyone who has an other opinion would love to talk directly in this Zoom. So, in my opinion, I kind of agree with Miss Angie's opinion on that, but the development is like very in early stage right now, and for me personally, I am really keen in studying metaverse right now, like in Web3. So in metaverse, we can literally make a simulation on how people would behave in certain places. So I think before AI, we can kind of use Web3 facilitation such as metaverse to make a simulation of what kind of city that we would love to have. Yeah. Is there anyone want to express their opinion?
Yeah, me, I think that the advent of AI, the artificial intelligence, will foster the smart mobility society. It's because like AI just support the information today's information society. So I guess like there is still disadvantage of the advent of AI, but mainly I guess AI foster the establishing smart society.
Yes, thank you so much, Takaya, for your opinion. Ryuji, oh, who's this? Okay. So Ryuji, what do you think about the answers? Hello? I think he's not here. So, okay. So thank you for the opinions and the answers.
Sorry, hello, you're talking to me?
Hi, yes, Ibrahim.
Yeah, hello,
Hi.
how are you?
Good.
Yeah, okay, so sorry, what was the question?
Okay, so we were asking about everyone's opinion about how artificial intelligence will be used in smart society, and will it be a practical tool to make a smart mobility better for the society?
So I will maybe, I think this session is still going on. Maybe I am going to give my point of view after listening people's ideas, and I will give my point of view. Thank you very much.
Okay, so okay, Natalie. Yes.
I think we should say it like this. It can be a very useful tool to do tedious tasks like comparing data and compromising data and watching over it and stuff, which is tedious for man, but is easy for machines and AI. But we need to test it first. And I think metaverse would be nice to test it. I like this input.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to test out because it's like a very latest technology that it's very happening right now. Like literally everyone in government, in academia, everyone talking about AI implementation, and probably it can enhance or boost the development or the smart city or smart mobility itself. So if there is no one wants to express their opinion, then I'm going to read the next question from Anjali. So from Anjali, to establish the sustainable mobility system, it requires huge financial expenditure. For example, EVs or electrical vehicles and its charging stations are really costly and need space. Urban areas are hugely populated by other forms of activities and buildings, thus faces such problems. So, to which extent budget and space constraint affect while establishing the such sustainable mobility strategy and roadmap? I believe this for Ms. Anggi.
Okay, thanks, Angela, for the questions. I think it's very interesting questions because I've recently in my office and other kind of like donors internationally, we talk about EVs because of for the latest COP26. All number of the cities and countries just like to pledge to commit in electric vehicles kind of thing. So yeah, talking about the budget and also talking about the space, talking about how can we start to do the roadmap, the mobility strategy to lead into this kind of like sustainable and inclusive mobility. In our field, we usually about these words. So ASI, avoid, shift, and improve. So we believe if the cities are not starting from avoid and do not, do nothing, if they do nothing to do shifting, our steps, just like if we just like rush into the improve strategies, it will be nothing. So avoid, what are the avoid things? What are that can be included in the avoid strategies? It will talk about giving limitation on parkings, for the example. So if we do not let people to think that parking is kind of that a very hard things to access, if they can do parking for their own private motorized private vehicle anywhere, anytime, and there is no things that can punish them if they just can break the rule, or even when they park in the sidewalks, they will just do the business as usual, where we cannot once again achieve the sustainable and also inclusive mobility. But once we can control, for one example, talking about the parking, we do good parking management, we can have a good parking limitation in the city, and then we move forward, and parallelly we can comply with the provision of the good and reliable public transportation. We can hope that people do shifting. So once people do shifting, they can really once again left their motorized private vehicle at home, and they can start to use the public transportations whenever they want, whenever the occasions are. So they can use the public transportation because they can rely on public transportation because they have limitation once again to use their own vehicles to access the city. But then after we can do all the strategies talking about the avoid and shift, when we can ensure that people can easily walk to the bus stops, to bus stations, to the train stations, if they can securely and safely use their bikes and parks in the stations, in the stops, and also continue their journey with the buses, with the trains by bringing their own bikes, and also continue later on in the last miles using their own bikes. We can also help the cities to think more how we can create a sustainable mobility, because we believe that once the city transforms into some of the, when we can accommodate the walking, the cycling well, and also we can manage about the needs of the private vehicles, we can control them. We can also offer a very high quality and reliable public transport. Then we can start to talk about the improvement, how we can ensure that all the systems that are already running in the city, the mobility, can accelerate the mission on reducing the gas emission, for example. So one of the improvement strategies that we can use is electrifying the vehicles. So the EVs terminology is coming after. But then talking about the EVs, it's a very, very, still in a discussion, pros and cons. But in my perspective, it's a very, very good if we start to talk about the EVs or to electrify first the public transportations, for example, the buses. Because of why? Because we already passed those steps, so avoid and also shift. So we should like address the public transportations, and it will have the better or bigger effect and impact if we just like do electrification through our public transportation. Users are there, the usage are highly in the city, and then it can be used by anyone in the city. So once we want to have a strategy on the electrification, I think it will be very wise if we start talking about electrifying the buses first instead of the cars or even the motorcycles. But in a different context, in a different cities, I think talking about electrifying or start to electrify the two-wheelers and three-wheelers are another steps to think of, not only the buses, but because of, let's say, in Vietnam, in Indonesia, India, maybe two-wheelers and three-wheelers usage are also quite high. So if we can address the use of the electrification for those modes, it will also help the city to think more. And once again, talking about the mobility, it's not talking only about the users and the modes, but it's also talking about the space, about the area. And when we are talking about the area, as you mentioned, Anjali, there is a limitation about the space. And talking about this kind of like space, land, and scarcity of land issues, talking more about the cost to build something in the land, especially for the cities and countries that land is owned by individuals, it will have a lot of discussions that if we want to establish the systems. But if we start with the public and also public goods and use and manifest the public goods as well, the lands that owned by the officials, we can start that things. So let's say to work on the charging station, charging facilities, if we start with the public transportation, for example, buses, I think it will be manageable instead of we start for the cars that maybe use a lot of that will need and use a lot of lands and also spaces to fit and to to match the needs, the number of the electric charging facilities in the city to be installed. But if we are talking about this kind of like electrification things, I think it will be wise if we already done a good strategies and mitigates all the issues in avoid and shift strategies first. Because if we just like in rush and jump from those avoid and shift strategies, we just like spend a lot of money for nothing, because we still don't accommodate the needs for walking and cycling safely and securely, especially like create a good experience so they can enjoy all the journeys, and they will like not only walk for only 350 meters, but they can walk for 1 kilos or more. And if we don't address these needs first, or even like really ensure that people will get high quality of public services, public transportation services, it will be very difficult to set the EVs facilities.
Anjali said, thank you for reading the question, Alia, and Ms. Anggi for addressing it. It was really enlightening to hear from you. So you're welcome, Anjali. And she also said that in mobility infrastructure, the more solution is the shift from combustive engines to electric one, adding more cars in the city. The game-changing solution is to have an efficient public transport system. A city is not sustainable where the poor have cars, but where the rich use the public transport. And this is her personal view. So I really agree with your point right there. Yeah, and I wish that probably other cities in the world probably already have those kind of situation, but we can work it out in our own city by raising awareness of using public transportation as our daily basis modes. So sadly, we have reached the end of the session. Thank you so much, everyone who has participated in the Q&A session. And thank you so much to Miss Anggi for your presentation and your presence today. I am really happy and honored to have you here. And before that, I want to summarize some of the points from Miss Anggi's presentation. First is that we should see smart mobility from a whole new perspective, and most of the issues probably can be helped by using big data and to improve the infrastructure so we can serve and build the better design and facilities for the better accessibility to mobilize. And then we should be think beyond the technology system, but also the infrastructure and policies options to accommodate all needs in accessing the cities. And then smart system cannot always accommodate everyone. We need to ensure that everyone can access while we prioritize the people itself. And then accessibility itself is talking about everyone regardless the group and gender. And then we should understand accessibility point from the lenses from the vulnerable groups. And then most importantly, smart mobility should fit the needs to the city and its inhabitants to help people decrease their costs from to connect them to access the activities they need to attend in cities. So I hope everyone enjoy and learn so much about accessibility in smart mobility. Once again, thank you so much, Ms. Anggi, for giving us the presentation and your experiences and your past projects experiences to us, so we can have more perspective on this topic. And before we finish, I want everyone to open your cameras so we can have a documentation. Minhua, you can unshare your screen so we can take a picture. Okay, so everyone please open your camera. Miss Anggi, can you open your camera, or are you still cannot open your camera? Oh, okay, so tech problem. Okay, so I guess everyone already turned on their cameras. So I'm going to take the picture. Probably Momoka or Ivan also will take the picture. So 3, 2, 1. Once again. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you so much, Miss Anggi, for posting with emojis. And once again, thank you so much for everyone, especially Miss Anggi. I hope everyone here learned so much from her, and also learned so much about each other perspective earlier. And yeah, I wish everyone success, and I hope that we can see each other again another time. And don't forget to fill the attendance form that I have shared with you in the chat box. So yeah, this is we already reached our end of our session right now. So thank you so much once again. I hope everyone have a great success for the conference, and yeah, see you later and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
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 Nice day. Bye.
Was there any someone still want to? Oh, thank you. Hi.
Well done, everyone.
Well
Good
done.
job.
Just watch me break in your sweat. You're